Welcome back to Smart and Crazy. You guys ready for a mind blowing stat? Get this.
Yeah, that's wild. How in the world is that even possible? I mean, depression seems like the obvious answer. It's the classic mental health issue, right?
I know, right? It feels counterintuitive, but think about it.
Man, I think you're onto something. I've definitely felt that way myself. I'm a pretty introverted dude, and I hate small talk. It's like I'm okay being alone, but I'm also constantly bombarded with stimuli. It's like I'm always on, and I'm not sure that's a good thing. It's hard to just be present with yourself when there's so much noise.
That's a great way to put it. It's like we're living in a world where our attention is being constantly externalized. It's like we're trained to focus on the outside world, on our phones, on social media, on all these external stimuli. It's not just about social media, though, it's a more general shift in the way we live our lives.
Yeah, it's like we're so plugged in, it's hard to unplug. I used to have this problem where I would always have to be doing something, even if it was just listening to a podcast while I worked out or like listening to a lecture while I cooked. It was like I couldn't even spare a few minutes to just be with my thoughts.
I think that's a really common experience these days. We're constantly bombarded with information, and it's hard to find that space to just be with ourselves. It's like we've become addicted to external stimulation.
You know what's really interesting about that? It's like if you don't use a muscle, it atrophies. And I think the same thing happens with our brains. We're constantly using the external parts of our minds to process information, but we're not giving our internal selves a chance to catch up.
It's almost like we're training our brains to be dependent on external validation. We look to our phones, to our social media feeds to tell us who we are and what we're supposed to be doing.
And that's dangerous. It's like we're losing touch with our internal compass. We're not sure what we really want, what we really believe in, because we're just constantly chasing this external validation.
Imagine if we were raised in a dark cave. Our eyes would never develop properly. We wouldn't be able to see because our brains would never have been exposed to light. It's the same with our inner world. If we don't make time to explore it, it's going to atrophy.
This is starting to sound like a conspiracy theory, like we're being programmed to be mindless drones. Maybe I'm going a little too far, but I'm just thinking about all the stuff we're bombarded with. It's like we're constantly being sold something, whether it's a product, an idea, or a way of life.
I get where you're coming from, but I think it's more about a lack of awareness than a conspiracy. It's like we're not realizing that we're choosing to be dependent on these external forces. We're making a conscious choice to stay plugged in, to keep scrolling, to keep consuming.
Okay, so maybe it's not a grand conspiracy, but it's still pretty messed up. We're basically losing our ability to think for ourselves. We're becoming dependent on algorithms and influencers to tell us what to think and what to feel.
It's not just about algorithms, John. It's about our own choices. We're the ones who decide to check our phones first thing in the morning, to scroll before we go to bed, to spend hours watching videos. It's not that technology is evil, it's that we're not using it in a way that's healthy for us.
Okay, so I get it. It's not a conspiracy, but it's still a problem. We need to find ways to reconnect with ourselves. We need to learn how to unplug to be present, to listen to our inner voices. It's like we're not just consumers, we're creators. We have the power to shape our own realities.
Exactly. We're not just being passively programmed. We can choose to be more mindful, to be more deliberate about how we spend our time and attention.
So, what do we do about it? This is all well and good, but I'm not sure I know how to unplug. I'm constantly checking my phone. I'm always on the go. It's hard to find time to just be with myself.
It's a journey, John, not a destination. But the first step is to acknowledge the problem. We need to be aware of how much time we're spending plugged in and how it's affecting our mental health. Then we can start making changes.
All right, so what are some of these changes? I need a real world example. I'm not just going to sit in a cave and meditate for hours. I mean, I might, but maybe not.
How about a digital detox? It's not about throwing your phone in the ocean. It's about setting aside time to unplug. Maybe it's an hour a day, maybe it's a weekend, whatever works for you.
Interesting, but what do you do during that time? I'm not exactly a master of solitude. I mean, I do enjoy my own company, but it can be a bit intimidating to just sit there with my thoughts.
That's where mindfulness comes in. You can practice mindfulness through meditation, journaling, yoga, or even just taking a walk in nature. It's about slowing down, paying attention to your senses, and being present in the moment.
Okay, I can try that. But what about all the information I'm missing out on? I mean, I'm a tech guy. I'm constantly consuming information about the latest gadgets, the latest trends. How can I just stop?
It's about finding a balance, John. You don't have to completely cut yourself off from the world. It's about choosing how you spend your time and attention. Do you really need to know about the newest flavor of ice cream every minute of every day? Maybe not.
That's a tough one. I'll admit, I do get a little addicted to that kind of stuff, but I'm also aware that it's not really essential. It's just noise. And sometimes it's good to just turn off the noise and listen to yourself.
Exactly. And that's the key to finding your way back to yourself. When you're not bombarded by external noise, you can start to hear your own inner voice. And that's where your true sense of self comes from.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light here. So we need to unplug. We need to practice mindfulness and we need to listen to our internal compass. That's the first step, right?
That's a great start, but it's also important to remember that we're not alone in this. A lot of people are struggling with the same issues, and we can support each other.
You know, what's interesting about this whole thing, I think a lot of this comes down to the way we've been taught to be men. Like, we're supposed to be strong, we're supposed to be stoic, we're supposed to suppress our emotions, and that's just not healthy.
You're absolutely right. It's like we're living in a society that's constantly telling us to be something we're not. We're getting mixed messages about what it means to be a man.
It's like, on one hand, we're told to be tough, to be a provider, to be the head of the household. On the other hand, we're told to be sensitive, to be emotionally available, to be partners in the relationship. It's a confusing mix.
And it's causing a lot of problems for men. They're struggling to find their place in the world, to figure out who they're supposed to be. And they're not getting the support they need to deal with these challenges.
It's like we're telling men to be strong, but then we're not giving them the tools to deal with their emotions. We're telling them to suppress their feelings, but then we're surprised when they explode with anger or lash out. It's a vicious cycle.
And it's even worse when we try to silence men's complaints. It's like if you're successful and things are going well, people think you have no right to complain. They don't even want to hear about your struggles.
You know, you're right about that. I've definitely seen that happen with men in the tech world. They're under immense pressure to perform, to innovate, to be at the top of their game. And if they even hint at being stressed or burned out, they're dismissed as being privileged or oversensitive.
It's the same with women, too. Like a pretty girl posts on social media about being unhappy, and people say, how can you be sad? You're so beautiful. It's like our worth is being judged based on our appearances or our achievements instead of our emotional experiences.
Yeah, it's like we're constantly trying to fit into this idealized version of ourselves. And when we don't, we're seen as flawed or defective. It's a pressure cooker.
And that pressure is leading to a crisis of masculinity. Men are feeling lost, isolated, and disconnected. They're not able to express their emotions and they're not getting the support they need.
And the worst part is, it's not just about depression, it's about a sense of hopelessness. It's about feeling like your life has no meaning, like there's no point in going on.
It's a really scary thought. It's like we're not just talking about mental illness, we're talking about a fundamental existential crisis, and it's affecting a whole generation of men.
We've got to do something about this, Sarah. This isn't just a theoretical problem. This is real, and it's hurting real people. We need to have a real conversation about masculinity, about emotional health, about the pressures we're putting on ourselves and on each other.
I agree. It's not about blaming anyone, John. It's about understanding the issues and finding solutions. We need to create a society where men feel safe to express their vulnerabilities, where they can find connection and support, where they can live authentically and truly be themselves.
And it's not just about men, Sarah. This is a universal problem. We're all living in a world that's obsessed with external validation. We're all struggling with the pressure to be perfect, to be successful, to be loved.
You're right. We all need to find a way to reconnect with ourselves, to cultivate our inner strength, and to create a more compassionate world for everyone.
So, where do we start? I'm ready to dive in and make some changes.
Let's start with ourselves, John. Let's practice mindfulness. Let's be more present. Let's listen to our inner voices. And let's be more compassionate towards each other, recognizing that we're all struggling in our own way.
I'm in. Let's do this. This is a journey we can all take together. We can create a world where everyone feels like they belong.
Thanks for joining us today, John. Remember, you're not alone in this. We're all in this together, and we can make a difference.